grabbed the umbrella and jumped down into the hay, and that was the first experience as a paratrooper that I had.
The Army set up a new jump school in Fort Benning, Georgia. The equipment at hand for the trainees was primitive. No jumpsuits, only mechanics' overalls. No proper headgear, only football helmets. Makeshift rope swings gave the men the rough idea of a parachute drop. But they would need to go higher to simulate a jump from a plane. The school found what it needed in a fair ride.
The first thing you would see was the obelisk and the globe, and that was the symbol for the World's Fair of 1939.
At the heart of the World's Fair in New York was a tower that parachuted fairgoers 250 feet down to the ground.
Everybody wanted to go on them. They'd raise you up, and the parachute would release, and you'd come down in a parachute, and that cost $1. And that was the second experience as a parachutist.
The next time Burge would jump from such towers, it would cost him nothing. In 1943, they were moved to the jump school and rebuilt. For the novice, the practice drop was high adventure.
Up to that point, I had never been off the ground, I think, over 2 stories in my life, even as a carpenter. So when we went up on 250 feet and you're hanging by a single cable, and the wind is swinging you back and forth, it was exciting, very, very exciting. Of course, I had no control over the release. They released me, and I did make a good descent and a good landing, a perfect right front tumble and so on, recover the chute.
Fort Benning's jump school rushed every recruit through his training. With only a jump or two from the tower under his belt, it was time for Don's first ride in a plane. He was taken up to 1,200 feet.
All of a sudden, every man I know that came into paratroopers all say the same thing. What the hell am I doing here? What am I doing here? Maybe I don't want to do this. And all of a sudden you can feel the cold air coming in from the open door. And you're so sweaty, you can feel the dampness and the coldness. And all of a sudden you're next to the door, and then that man's gone.
That first jump, the anticipation and the training, you finally had made it, and you jumped out. You didn't know what was going to happen. And it opened, and there was the exhilaration.
Without thinking, you reach one foot down to feel for the ground, you reach the other foot down, well, then that's what they call bicycling. You're 1 foot, 1 foot, 1 foot. Well, I did that, and I hit the ground, and I fractured a bone in my right ankle.
Don's first jump from a plane put him out of action. His training group carried on without him, making their last few practice jumps to get their wings. Don was still laid up when his friends left for their graduation jump.
We all bought beer and whiskey and things and stashed it away. We were going to celebrate when they came back. And I recall hearing sirens, but we hear those every once in a while. And I waited and waited, and none of my buddies came in my little barracks. So finally I went next door, and I went in, and I said, "Where's all my buddies?" And they were, by this time they had the beer out and everything, and they said, "Take a beer." And I said, "Well, where's all my buddies?" And they said, "They're all dead." The pilot took up what they call a jumping attitude. He raised the tail a little bit, he throttled back on the port engine, and when he did, the starboard engine cut out and it hit the ground and exploded, and all of my buddies were burnt. They're all dead. So anyway, I took a beer and went back to my barracks and lay down. It was just quiet in the barracks, very quiet. All my buddies were killed.
In the rush to train such an enormous airborne force for D-Day, such accidents were inevitable. Don's buddies were only a few of the men who would die during paratrooper training. Don got his wings a few weeks later, in time for D-Day. Back in France, Rommel spent the Christmas of 1943 inspecting his line of defenses along the coast. What he saw disturbed him. The Atlantic Wall was riddled with weak spots. He strengthened his defenses by peppering the beaches with another layer of death traps that would be invisible to an advancing army.
Let's now move up the beach further. We had better be careful as we do so, because in between these successive lines of obstacles, at any point, there may be mines, and probably will be, mines which are buried just beneath the surface.
These Teller mines were designed to knock out tanks. Rommel planned to lay nearly 170,000 of them every square mile. With just one, explosives expert Sidney Alford will attempt to demonstrate their power.
3, 2, 1. Let's go and see what happened. I cannot deny this is not really a tank, but it was a working vehicle before we pressed the button. You can see that it has separated main components, it's shredded the body, it's dispersed the body. There's body 50 meters over there, there's body over there, there's body over here, and there is the steering section over here. Let's look a bit closer. Here we have an unusually neat crater. That's beautiful. That will give you some idea of the power of a Teller mine.
Rommel planned to sow his killing fields in France with 200 million mines. Among them tripwire mines, jumping mines, and even mines that could be driven by remote control under enemy tanks. But that was not the last of Rommel's defenses. At the back of the beach lay a field of barbed wire.
It's a horrible obstacle. This is to stop people. The horizontal wires, they're not pulled taut. But there's a reason for that. If you don't mind risking some nasty scratches, you can climb over a taut wire. But a slack wire, you can't. It's wobbly and you'll fall over. Remember that everything that happens here will be happening in a hail of machine gun and rifle fire.
The Allies needed a way to carve a path through the fields of mines and barbed wire. Clearing them by hand would take too long and cost too many lives. What they required was a machine to do it for them. In 1943, the British Army formed a specialized tank unit. Its leader was another renegade, a man rarely caught on camera. Major General Sir Percy Hobart. 2 years earlier, he had been ushered into retirement by his conservative commanding officers, who found his views on tank warfare too radical. For D-Day, they needed Hobo back.
He was a tall, imposing figure, I suppose, in a strange way. He generally wore a leather jerkin over his battle dress and had what I can only describe as his granny's khaki scarf wound round his neck and dangling down in front. He wore these thick black half-rimmed glasses, so he looked fierce.
Hobart was an innovator. He would be asked to develop an entire range of customized tanks. He had American Shermans and British Churchills fitted with a whole range of mechanical devices, specially designed to deal with any obstacle Rommel could place in their path.